Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. I am Illuminati, and this is the Crypto and Cognac podcast show, as always, live 7 p.m. sharp Atlantic Standard Time, right here on YouTube. And as always, drinking my yak. Guys, we are celebrating. This is episode 30, hashtag episode 31 for real, of season 4. It has been my pleasure to have you guys company for the last 30 episodes, for the last 4 seasons. For those of you who've been with me since we launched out on Instagram Live 3 years ago in 2021 in the crazy crypto bull market, and we are on the banks of another bull market. So it's very, very exciting to be here with you guys, celebrating with you guys, sharing with you guys, recapping this last season of the podcast. I mean, we've had some amazing conversations. We've looked at some amazing topics. We've seen so much happen in the space over the last 30 episodes. I mean, it was a crazy year. It was a crazy season, to say the least, because we had some crazy things happening with the ETFs. We had a lot happen with fallouts in the space. We had a lot happen as it relates to the regulators going after crypto in their various ways. So we're going to run through it all, and then we're going to take a quick look at what we can expect in season 5. So you guys may have noticed also that we lost some people along the way, but all for the better, right? So we started it off, of course. We had an amazing conversation with Stefan Delavaux talking about the DAO ecosystem. We had an opportunity to go across to Barbados for Crypto by the Sea. We talked with Anne Connolly about the value of Bitcoin and the future of fundraising using cryptocurrency and blockchain technology for fundraising for charities and stuff like that. We talked about the politics behind Bitcoin, of course. From the election standpoint, we talked about El Salvador as a model for that. We have recently seen the president of El Salvador be re-elected for another term. So we are going to continue to see Bitcoin blockchain play an important role in their political structure, and we might see more and more countries adopting some of the strategies that they have undertaken. We've seen some of the leaders from the UAE heading across to El Salvador to have conversations with them about their integration of blockchain technology with their financial system and their monetary policy. We talked about CBDCs and how the rollout of CBDCs have been hugely ineffective. The adoption of CBDCs have been very, very poor, and CBDCs have seemingly been rejected by the population, right? But we know they're going to continue trying. So we'll see what happens, especially as, we see adoption become more and more booming. We talked about the Bitcoin ETF to nauseam. I was fed up of it. I was at the point where I was like, Dread, just approve it already so we could stop talking about it, right? And we saw it get adopted. We saw the price action obviously go a completely different direction after it. What is interesting is that in the first 3 weeks, I can't remember the numbers offhand exactly, but in the first 3 weeks, I think these ETFs bought something like 42,000 Bitcoin. But interestingly enough, over the last 4 days, those same Bitcoin ETFs have bought 43,000 worth of Bitcoin. So what we are seeing is that the demand for BTC, especially via these traditional instruments in the traditional financial system, has been blowing up. And as such, we've seen the price action be impacted. Bitcoin is now over 52,000 again for the first time in maybe 3 years since 2021. And people are speculating that if this demand continues, we might see a new all-time high even before the halving, right? And we know that right now the demand is outstripping the available supply, and after the halving, the supply of BTC is going to even be further reduced. So what does that say for price action? Again, as always, I didn't do it tonight, but let me do it right now. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. Do your own research. We drink cognac and talk crypto here, right? Don't go and say, I'll see, right? But that was just one aspect. We can expect to continue to hear more and more about the ETFs as more and more institutional players and traditional bankers roll out their very own ETFs. And as regulators across the world start looking as to whether or not they're going to approve their own ETFs. We know Hong Kong is looking into it, and Hong Kong is always the test bed for China. So we can expect to see, once it gets approved in Hong Kong, China should follow shortly after. We're already seeing applications being resubmitted for Ethereum ETFs. So we can just expect that maybe by the end of this year, we are seeing some Ethereum spot ETFs being approved in the United States as well. Obviously, we talked a lot about regulators. We had the opportunity to touch base this year with John Wainaina Karanja, the founder of the Black Blockchain Summit, and got an opportunity to really look at the unique perspective of Afro-descended people in the blockchain space, and what, some of the concerns that they see and how they're addressing it, some of the concerns for Africa in general as it relates to the blockchain movement. Obviously, we celebrated our 100th anniversary. A lot of noise was made in the last year about the flaws and the influence of crypto influencers. We saw the fall of some significant crypto influencers. Big Ben, of course, BitBoy Crypto. We saw the total, what to call it, demoralizing decay of his character, and obviously his empire, his crypto empire. His business partners turn on him, his marriage failed, and it brought us to question, what is the value of the crypto influencer? Does that person have value? How do you go about choosing the influencers that you listen to? How do you go about accessing information about crypto? And again, it comes down to doing your own research. Despite what anybody tells you, despite what you hear on this podcast or any other podcast, please do your own research. Even if your friend tell you, your brother tell you, do your own research, because nobody has the same level of insight into your financial situation as you would have, right? We talked about, obviously, the market cycle, anticipating what was to come with the halving, what was to come in terms of all-time highs, in terms of looking at whether or not we had concluded the bear market, whether the bull market had officially begun again. And honestly, I still don't think we are in a full-blown bull cycle. I don't think it happens before the halving. I am seeing a lot of very, very bullish news that is not having the type of impact on the market that you would usually expect during a bull cycle. I think the adoption is growing, and because I think we're still under 10% in terms of global adoption. As the adoption increases, we're going to see the numbers increase, but I don't think that we are in a full-fledged bull cycle just yet. And that's why I personally think that the next season of this podcast and of so many other crypto information sources are going to be so important in terms of people who are looking towards this next bull market, hoping to impact their financial lives using that information. I think if you have never shared this podcast with a friend, with family, I think the next season is going to be one of the most important seasons of this podcast. Shameful plug, yes, but it don't mean that it is not true. We talked about Bitcoin as a vehicle for freedom in the world. We talked about, crypto market manipulation, what that looks like. Again, questioning whether or not the bull market is back. We looked at the underlying and initial idea of why Bitcoin was created, taking a look back on the 15-year or crystal anniversary of Bitcoin white paper. I think it's important because we come into crypto and we hear so much about price action, we hear so much about meme coins. A lot of people are introduced to crypto through a lot of the capital focused areas. I think it's always important to take a look back to, the origins of this technology, the origins of this monetary policy, and understand why it was created and ultimately what its intentions are for our world, right? We took a look at the NFT market and its recovery, whether it has happened. We have seen some movement, not the type of movement that we would expect, especially for a bull market. So again, one of the reasons why I don't think that we are fully back into a bull market is because NFTs and the NFT space hasn't really taken off like you would typically see it do in a bull run. We looked at crypto as a form of estate planning. We had the big news about Binance, the attacks on Binance by the SEC, the CFTC, the US regulators, Binance pleading guilty and 𝐂𝐍 pleading guilty to charges. I think we're a few days out. I think by next week, the 18th, I think 𝐂𝐍 is supposed to be being sentenced for those charges. So we'll see what the market does when that happens. We talked about the value proposition of ETFs. We talked about some of the people in the crypto space who are anti ETFs. They believe that it is going to deteriorate the influence of the average person on the Bitcoin ecosystem. It's going to create pots of control for institutions because they have to custody all this Bitcoin for their customers. They now have greater influence on the market. And what does that look like for the rest of us who have been participating? Because we know what they've done with the traditional system thus far. Can they be trusted? Is it more positive? Is it more draconian than that? I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. We discussed, some of the technical checkpoints in the space, market correction, support, resistance, just to give people a little bit more understanding about that. We had a discussion about meme coins, an area that we've typically stayed away from traditionally because, I've been prior to this moment more of a purist, and I've always seen meme coins as a bit of a joke, but clearly they are here to stay. You know what I mean? We've seen the market really kind of be jump started by meme coins, bonk, Pepe. We had a few big ones. Obviously, we talked about airdrops, the huge airdrop craze, airdrop farming. We're gonna have a lot more conversations about that. We have some people already lined up to have those conversations with. We talked about L1s, L2s. What's the difference? What is the value proposition that each presents? Does it even make sense to have L1s, L2s? And obviously, when we talk L1, L2s, we have to have the conversation about which blockchains do we see having potential. We always say, it's too early to choose winners, but I think we have some bit of an inclination of who are the ones who are going to stick around. People believe Ethereum. People are saying Solana, despite the fact that Solana has recently had another outage when they were doing so well. But they continue to have the network effects. They continue to have the activity, more activity than any other network. So clearly they're doing something right. Obviously, we talked about the technology versus the price action, which is the area that we should focus on. Is it important to focus on both elements? And then we looked at crypto and payments most recently, looking at all the things that Visa and MasterCard are doing in the space. And the big news that is coming out of those two companies, Visa signing on an agreement to have the ability to push crypto to debit and credit cards in 145 countries. And like I said, that not really impacting the markets like we would expect. So it has been a crazy, hectic season. Of course, my boy Steven has been here the whole time. Steven, I want to say shout outs to you. I always appreciate you being here with me. If nobody else is here, I know Steven is here riding with me. And I'm so looking forward to season 5. We have some big conversations lined up. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they come to fruition. Some politicians, some regulators, some people in the space and around the space, some people building in this space, some conversations we're going to have to check back in on, people who were doing things and new opportunities there. But more so, I'm excited to see what this next bull market looks like, what happens post halving, how an ETF environment mixed with a Bitcoin halving impacts price action, which ultimately impacts adoption because everybody wants to run in. Does the introduction of institutional players reduce the level of volatility that we are used to seeing during these bull markets? How does the movements that happen with Bitcoin and these ETF players impact the spill-on effects, moving capital from Bitcoin to Ethereum, then to major alts, then to minor alts? Do we see any face melting this market cycle, this bull run cycle? I think as much information as we've had over the last 15 years, I don't think anybody can really honestly predict what is to come. But it's going to be exciting. And I thank you guys for being here with me and for continuing to be with me for the next season 5, season 6, season 7. When are we going to stop? I don't know. Maybe never, But I'll be here. I'll have my Hennessy and I'll be happy to be checking in with you guys, touching base on this crazy cryptic world of cryptocurrency. As I say always, and you guys know it well by now, adoption is inevitable. Illuminati out until season 5. We're going to take a few weeks break, get ourselves sorted, and we will be back, I think, late March or mid-March, somewhere around that time. I think it's a 3-week holiday, and then we'll be back. See you guys then. Love always. Illuminati out. Be blessed.